I invite you right now to think about your lawn. Can you think about your lawn? Okay, you're thinking about your lawn. It's green, mostly. It's green, it's lustrous. You cut it every week, or maybe even have it professionally done. Maybe it's edged or thatched. You water it occasionally. You may even give it a special feeding in the springtime. The lawn, it's a beautiful thing. It's also one type of grass. It's rather uniform. But then, one day, another plant shows up and terror strikes. The weed. Disaster. This other plant has shown up. This weed has shown up. And now we have to go to the store and we have to buy more stuff. We have to buy weed killer, maybe get some Scott's stuff to put on it, and we try to eradicate the wayward plant that has just entered into the uniformity of our lawn. This plant, made by a loving God, has now upset the balance, has upset the uniformity, and has upset our expectations of what our lawn is called to be. But I checked it out. On Wikipedia, it says, a weed is a plant that is considered undesirable in a particular situation. And they say that botanists will tell you that weed has no botanical significance. Actually, weeds have a great deal of benefit to us, for medicine, for all kinds of different things. The thing is, when we call something a weed, we do it from our own biases against that particular expectation of what our lawn is supposed to be. Now, I realize Jesus doesn't really worry too much about plants. It's a parable. But what does it say about us? We could say to ourselves, let's see, I'm going to make a list of all the people who are weeds in my life. I would imagine we'd come up with a long list of people. But we have to think about that. We usually end up classifying ourselves as what? As the wheat. We're the wheat, and everybody that we don't like are the weeds. Exactly. But that, of course, is a mistake. None of us is perfect. None of us is good all the time. None of us has everything going on, and none of us is absolutely 100% perfect all the time. And so we realize that there are sometimes we're weeds and sometimes we are wheat. And remember, if we do call ourselves wheat all the time, Jesus says those who exalt themselves will be humbled. If we look into the Bible, into the Scriptures, David, King David, is wheat. Certainly, he's the king of Israel, and his armies have conquered every other army around. However, he desires the wife of one of his generals, and has him killed in order to have his wife for his own. Weed and wheat behavior, always. Then there's Jonah. He is wheat sometimes. At the end of the story of Jonah, he goes to the people of Nineveh. He follows the Lord's command, and he preaches to them, and they change their lives. But remember, at the beginning, what happens? God calls him, and he runs away. Weed and wheat. And then there are the disciples, especially St. Peter. They follow Jesus. They learn from him. They open their hearts and their minds and their ears to listen to him and try to understand his words. That's a good wheat situation. But there are other times when they're a bit weedy. That is, when they run away from him, especially St. Peter. Remember, at one point, Peter is saying to Jesus, "You are the Christ, the Son of the living God." And Jesus congratulates him and says, only the Spirit could have revealed this to you. 2 chapters later, he's saying, "Get behind me, Satan." Weeds and wheat constantly. And so we are called to be people who see deeply into a person and are able to see God's image and likeness in them, and not merely to judge them as the weed that we need to get rid of. No one is 100% weed, and nobody is 100% wheat. And now we move to our own times. We look around our society each day and people call us to judge. 52,000 kids show up from Honduras, and a lot of people are treating them as if they are weeds because they aren't part of our lawn. There are immigrants, people of color, the poor, the imprisoned. All of them are seen as weeds. in our society, and we are called as Catholic Christian people to look into the heart, to the soul of all, and say that these are the beloved sons and daughters of God, no matter where they come from, no matter what they may have done. The challenge for all of us, each and every day, is to see the light of God that burns brightly in each person, and not just dismiss those we don't like as weeds that we can eradicate. And so we have to eliminate our biases, our prejudices, and truly become welcoming people who embrace all. When we look at this story, when does the judgment happen? It doesn't happen now. It happens at the harvest, at the end of the age, when the wheat has borne fruit. And who does the judging? Not us. In the story, it's the householder, that is, God himself. And so we are called to reject the temptation to reject and pass judgment on other people, because we realize that we rely on the joy and the tolerance and the patience of our loving Father. So today, as we celebrate our faith, that faith teaches us many, many different things. It teaches us that all of us are made in the image and likeness of a loving God. Our faith teaches us that we are brothers and sisters to one another, no matter where we are from, no matter what language we may speak, no matter what our cultural background might be. And we also are taught that all have weak tendencies and all have weed tendencies. And we pray that we might open our eyes to see the spark of God's light that shines in each person, valuing them as God's great creation.